How's it going, everyone? You're all very welcome to this LGFA Planning Your Club AGM webinar. My name is Niall Mulrain. I'm a National Development Officer with the LGFA, and I'll be going through the presentation with you this evening. Just some housekeeping before we start. I suppose if you want to ask any questions during the presentation, you can type into the Q&A box, which is on the toolbar you should see at the bottom of your screen. You can also raise your hand at any point, and we can unmute you there and you can ask a question. And I suppose any other interactions you have, there's a wee box that says chat on it, and if you type it in there. And as I say, if you can't hear or speak or see the presentation at any stage, we'll advise you to log out of the webinar and log back in. All right. As we say, tonight's webinar is going to be on preparing and planning for your club AGM. Okay. I suppose what we're going to look at tonight, we're going to look at, I suppose, what the AGM is and what kind of opportunities the AGM presents us. And some of those, are to reflect on the year we've had. Okay, so that's one thing. We hear reports, and we hear from all the different subcommittees. We hear from the secretary, the treasurer, that kind of thing. We hear the reflect on the year we've had. One of the things we love to use the AGM for is to bring in new faces as well. And I suppose what some clubs might do too is they communicate their vision for the year ahead, and they set foundations to be able to plan ahead at their AGM as well. Maybe in the chat there, guys, if you want to just type in maybe anything else that you could use your AGM for, or the kind of opportunities you could get out of your AGM. So we'll give you 30 seconds to a minute there. If you can think of any more things you could, opportunities that your AGM might present to your club. Yeah, Maureen, very good point. Encouraging new volunteers to get them involved. So that's a big one at the AGM, and I suppose we'll talk about that later on, and we'll discuss maybe different strategies of getting new people involved and bringing in fresh faces. I suppose Jamie, there you've said electing new committee members as well. Yeah, so trying to freshen up maybe your executive that way as well. I suppose because we've got so many things we can use our AGM for. Sometimes there's a lot of things to do, and we can get pulled in a load of different directions. Okay, and we mightn't be as prepared as we think we are when the time comes. So tonight we'd hope to maybe set you on the right path and give you the key things you should be looking out for in terms of planning your AGM. Okay, a couple of wee facts, just to, I suppose, wee bits of rules around the AGM. Your club AGM should be held on or before the 1st of December. Okay, that's as per the official guide. And with the LGFA, members should be notified at least 5 days beforehand. Okay, so you should be notifying your members at least 5 days before the AGM actually happens. And then, as we said there, we mentioned earlier, the outgoing secretary and treasurer should give a report on all activities in the club in the past year. Okay. At the AGM, then, I suppose what we're looking to elect as per the rule will be the chairperson and vice chair, secretary, assistant secretary, registrar and assistant registrar, treasurer and vice treasurer, and then also delegates to the county board and county convention. And then you've got your PRO, your development officer, and culture and language officer may also be elected at the AGM. Important one about the AGM as well is that you appoint a children's officer who should be a member of your club executive then as well. But it's important to note that they're not elected; they're appointed at the AGM as well. And then a report from the AGM must be sent to your county board. Okay, so your county executive within 10 days of your AGM happening. Okay, I suppose we'll start pre-AGM and the kind of things we have to do pre-AGM. I had mentioned there that we must let our members know 5 days, at least 5 days in advance of the AGM. So I suppose communication to them and letting your members know it's on, really, really important. Okay, so we'll be advising you to promote your AGM through your positive verbal communication, and positive is the big word there. Okay, I know AGMs maybe in the past people aren't fussed on going to them because they know they're going to get a job, or they know they might get a job. So I suppose be positive around what the AGM is. If there's something that's happened in the year, that is going to be reported on, if you have plans for the coming year, then advertise that and communicate that, rather than come on down to the hall and we might make you the children's officer, Positive body language as well. I suppose you're the people in the club, and you're the people, especially on the call tonight, that are obviously going to be making the AGM happen. So being enthusiastic about it, being positive about yourself is really important too. And then the last one there, welcoming attitude. I always find in a lot of clubs, there's two camps. There's the people on the inside who are running about doing everything, and they're working really, really hard, and they're wondering why no one's helping. And then there's the people on the outside who are sitting thinking, well, they have everything covered. I'm not needed, or I'm not required. So having that welcoming attitude and being open and welcoming anyone in goes a long way as well to getting more people to attend your AGM. As we say, notification. So give written notice to your members. Okay, put it on your social media channels. Send out the messages. Send emails to your members. Let them know. Okay, because if they don't know, or if you've done everything to let them know, then there's no excuse. But if you don't do everything you can to let them know, there's the excuse. Well, I didn't know when it was on. Okay, and you can also do things like posters or have a bit in the bulletin or the newsletter. Put it in the local paper and put it in your social media as well. But the big thing is, make sure you communicate it. Okay, make sure you let people know when the AGM is happening. Okay, I know we've mentioned as well, by rule it's 5 days. I'd be advising you to plan it well in advance. Okay, give yourself 2-3 weeks just to set it up and let people know, and keep reinforcing the message that it's on at this date, and we're welcoming people to come to it. In terms of scheduling your AGM, okay, depending on how busy you are as a club, depending on, I suppose, the local area and the community, scheduling a meeting can be the most challenging part of setting it up. Okay, so once we know what we're trying to do, who we want to come, and where it's going to be, I suppose it's time to consider how much time is needed and what date and time there will be to meet. Okay, and I'm not going to give you the perfect time and the perfect date and the perfect day to have your AGM. That's a personal thing for every club. I know my own club would have had their AGM on a Sunday evening, and it wasn't very well attended, and they moved it then to a Monday evening, which is the same time the committee meetings would have been held, and attendance rose then. So that mightn't be similar with your club, it might be, but on your own circumstances, check when will people be most available. Okay, and that's where you have your AGM. And if you're finding that on a specific date, at a specific time, on a specific day, that you're not getting a big crowd, it might be to an idea to change it. Okay, and then, as I say, make sure you have enough time. So the thing of having it on a Sunday afternoon, you've plenty of time to talk, whereas on a evening during the week, people might only have an hour or two. So consider that if there's topics to discuss, if there's different things coming up that people will want to discuss, consider that as well, that you have enough time to run your AGM as well. I suppose one thing to note as well is, if an officer is stepping down, ensure that that's communicated to your club in advance, so that they're not nominating the same person that is stepping down. Okay, so if your secretary stepping down or your treasurer stepping down, and when it gets to the AGM that they're nominating them again to step forward, make sure people know who's staying on, who's stepping down. And it's a good thing from your own point of view to know that as well. And we'll talk about that in a wee while, in terms of looking for a replacement or looking for someone to take over as well. So it should be clearly indicated who would like to go for re-election and who is stepping down, so that the vacancies can be addressed prior to the night and allow people an opportunity to find out about the role before getting voted in. Okay, so they don't just land and they're told you're the new secretary, you're the new chairperson. In terms of, I suppose, your AGM reports, we talked about that a wee second ago, but the reports you should be looking at tonight, the chairperson's address. All right. So the highs and the lows and the different challenges throughout the year, that's really what that is. It's I suppose, a personal account of the year. While the secretary's report is the factual report or the historical account of the year. Okay, so the number of fixtures played, the number of competitions been involved in, and even you can include results and things like that as well. Our membership numbers, stuff like that there. Okay, and then I suppose the treasurer's report is the financial report, and that should be backed up by your P&L for the year, or your bank statements for the year as well. And then some clubs do like to do the club coaching officer report, maybe a youth report, or possibly even just even a social report on the different things happening around the club throughout the year. So it's up to you, I suppose, but the top 3 ones are the 3 ones you should really be concentrating on in terms of your reports for the AGM. I suppose, notice then, we've mentioned this already in terms of scheduling the meeting and making sure people know about the meeting. Give sufficient notice for the meeting, okay? And make sure people have sufficient time to familiarize themselves with the AGM, okay? So if you tell them in 3 days the AGM's happening in 5 days' time, so Maureen, sorry, funny, we have a question there. Your club constitution, I'm assuming that's talking about, Maureen. So you've said if your constitution says notification for an AGM is 21 days, do the LGFA rules apply, or do you stick with the club constitution? Maybe if you could clarify that, maybe, Maureen, and we'll come back to that at the end, if that's all right. If you clarify, you're talking about the club constitution. Okay, we'll come back to that at the end, if that's all right, Maureen. I say make sure they have sufficient time to get to know even who's standing for election, what things are being voted on, is there any motions coming to the AGM, things like that there. Let people know, okay? We've also, something we've come up with in the last couple of years is, technology. If you're going to have presentations, over the last couple of years, we've run sort of the online hybrid AGMs. We're back to, face-to-face at the minute, and this year we'll be back to face-to-face. But if you're showing any presentations, if there's any videos, things like that there, or if you're using any kind of technology for voting, or if it's just going to be done by show of hands or secret ballot, that kind of thing, make sure that you have appropriate technology. Okay, so you have your projector, you have your laptop set up, and it's working, and it's working before everyone lands is the big piece of advice there. So be at the venue early to ensure your computer's working, your projector's working, your screen's working, all that kind of stuff as well. And as well as that, ensure you have a bit of support. So whether that's technology support, so you have someone that knows how that stuff works, or if you assign somebody to be able to assist people at your AGM, for example, if they're missing any printing reports, or if you needed voting papers handed out, there's somebody responsible for that kind of thing as well, and that there's someone sufficiently experienced in how AGMs work to do that role. In terms then of your setup of the venue, prepare it before the delegates arrive. Set up your top table, and you can arrange either theatre style or classroom style in terms of your delegates then, and then ensure your chairperson can see your attendees and vice versa, so everyone can see the top table there as well. And the big thing about your AGMs is set out your rules at the start. Set out your standing orders of the meeting at the start. That if someone wants to speak, they should raise their hand. If someone is speaking, they have a set amount of time to speak, and then you move on to someone else and things like that. There, it's good to make that clear at the start, so people know exactly the rules, and they know even the likes of putting phones off before the meeting starts, things like that there. So make sure they're clear and the instructions have been laid out before the meeting starts. Just on the setup as well, and we mentioned there about setting up the room. The setting of a meeting can involve more planning than it might appear. Okay, so make sure it's accessible to everyone is the big thing. So if it's up a flight of stairs, that there's a lift, that kind of thing, that anyone that wants to come to the AGM who's a member can attend is a big thing there, because you could be excluding someone you don't know by having your room not accessible. Okay, and as I say, ensure it has the venue and the equipment and the space that you require, and it's important that it'll remain open for the duration of your meeting, that there's not a caretaker coming jingling a set of keys and looking you out before it's over, and that there are no distractions. It's somewhere where there's no distractions. It may be your clubhouse, it might be the parish hall, it could be a school, something like that there, but ensure there's somewhere you can get through the meeting without any distractions as well. I suppose mentioned their choice of location as well. A couple of wee things that maybe you don't think of, but small, tight rooms create more focused conversations. But it's important that it's not too small, like a dressing room, and that you have adequate space for everyone. Okay, so no, maybe that might have been something that happened in the past where a club did have their AGM in one of the change rooms. But I suppose you want it to be somewhere where everyone can fit in, or everyone that wants to fit in. And it's that thing about larger rooms create more space, and they tend to be more formal. And large conference tables and having people around conference tables tend to be more formal and only beneficial if someone wants to take notes. Okay, so you can have your top table at the top, and your secretary or assistant secretary, whoever's going to take the minutes of the meeting, and then everyone else set up. You can see in the picture there, just in theatre style. And the final one there is really important too, I think, is that food creates a more relaxed conversation, and sometimes it can mean that you have more people coming. If there's a cup of tea and a sandwich, you might have somebody that lands that otherwise mightn't. So it's something to think of. Even having a wee cup of tea at the start can get people into the mode of talking to each other, can get people relaxed, they can get into the swing of things a lot easier than if they're just landing and taking their seat and starting the meeting, you know. The next point I suppose have for you is the 3 hours of your AGM. Okay, and you might think, what's the point in practicing? But practice your AGM. Okay, practice, rehearse. That you know the structure of your meeting. You know who's going to speak first. You know who's going to speak second. You know who's going to look after the election of executive and election of the committee and things like that there. And for it to run smoothly, it's essential that you practice. And it might only be 2 or 3 people that need to know how the meeting's running, but it's good to have a run through before it actually starts, instead of something coming up that you're maybe not expecting. And if there's going to be a vote, really important how you've discussed how this is going to work, including if it'll be a secret ballot. Okay, and if it is a secret ballot, how are you going to run that? So who's going to look after the voting papers? Where are people going to go to vote in the room? That kind of thing, you know. So make sure you have that rehearsed. If anyone's making a presentation, as I mentioned earlier there as well, be sure to give them enough time to be ready when the meeting begins. Okay, and if you're the facilitator of the meeting, get up to speed with, I suppose, anyone that is making a presentation and maybe what issues that might come up. And it's a good idea as well, if there is something coming up to be voted on or debated at the AGM, it's a good idea for yourself as secretary or chairperson or whoever it might be that you're running the meeting, that you know what might come up from that, and you know what kind of discussion points might come out of that as well. Okay, I see we have another question in there. We'll wait to the end, I suppose, for all the questions, but keep them coming in. I suppose the smooth running of your AGM as well, as always with all our meetings, have your agenda there and make sure that your members of your executive have been briefed and they know the order of the meeting. So again, who's going to do your reports? What way is the election going to run? How's your voting going to run? So make sure that people know how it's going to run, and then put your standing orders in place, as we said earlier, to assist with the running of an organisation of the meeting. And I've got a wee example here of sample standing order, template here. The proposer of a resolution or an amendment may speak for 5 minutes, but no more than 5 minutes. Okay, so that might be something you put. So if you've got a motion to debate, whoever's proposing the motion gets 5 minutes. If someone wants to speak on the motion, then they get to speak for another 3 minutes. Okay, so wee things like that there. We've got the proposer of a resolution or amendment may speak for a second time then for 3 minutes before a vote's taken, but no one else may get to speak for 3 minutes or for a second time at all on the same motion. The chairperson may at any time they consider a matter has been sufficiently discussed, call on a reply, and when that has been given, a vote must be taken. And a delegate may, with the consent of the chairperson, move that the chairperson now put this thing to a vote or put this motion to a vote, you know. And then when the meeting considers it appropriate, a vote may be by secret ballot. Okay, so that could be one of your standing orders. Otherwise, it could be a show of hands, you know. And then you can see the rest of them. I'll not go through them all, but you can see the rest of them on the screen there at the minute. So even the likes of a chairperson might change the items on the agenda if there's a majority of those present and voting wants it. You know, wee things like that there. So there's some ideas on what your standing orders could be. But again, it's if there's anything that's maybe person or to your club. Maybe that's something to consider there as well. I suppose respecting the clock as well is a big thing from your own point of view, that your meeting is scheduled to start, it starts, and when it's scheduled to end, that's when it does end, because people are giving up their time to come to the AGM. So look, if you don't get through something, you schedule a second meeting. If there wasn't time to get through everything, you schedule a second meeting instead of keeping everyone for 4 or 5 hours, you know. I suppose big thing as well, don't allow mobile devices. Okay, so make it clear that mobile devices should be silenced and stay out of sight for the meeting to avoid any distractions caused by calls or notifications and that thing. And sometimes the temptation to check mobile phones can hinder sort of people working together, discussing things, or even being tuned into what's being discussed. So it can sometimes ruin your meetings as well. So it's a good one to have for all meetings, but especially the AGM, you know. And I suppose always have a plan B. Okay, so make a list of things that can go wrong, and how will you respond to it if they do, and what impact on the meeting, what the impact of the meeting can be. So if you think if your laptop's going to run out of battery, if have a plan B. So think about all the things and how your meeting's going to run, and then have a plan B in case something goes wrong. Okay, so there, I suppose, some wee tips around setting up the meeting and preparing for the meeting in terms of the actual meeting. What we're going to look at now is the types of people we're looking to get involved, or how we get more people involved, or maybe, I suppose, the structures we can put in place around getting fresh faces is one thing we talked about there. And the big thing we would say here is to match the roles, okay? And that's something we talk about all the time, is matching the roles. We've wee task piece here now. So I want you to think of the roles and qualities of, and we can write these down, okay? And you can pick one of them. You don't have to write it into the chat, just write it down yourself, okay? The chairperson, all right? The secretary, the children's officer, the under-12 coach, and the senior manager, okay? So I want you to think of the qualities and roles, and I'll give you 2 minutes now that you can go and do that and write them down on a piece of paper. The secretary, the chairperson, the children's officer, the under-12 coach, and the senior manager, okay? Think of the qualities and the roles. So what are the qualities needed to do this role, and what kind of things does this person actually do in the club, okay? And just 2 minutes there, write it down on a piece of paper. You can share it in the chat if you want, but you don't have to, and we'll discuss it when you're finished. Okay, so once you've done that, guys, I want you to think now, do you have any of the qualities, or sorry, do any of the qualities you've written down match any of the roles, and can you recognize these qualities in somebody else? Okay, so any of the qualities you wrote down for any of those roles, do you see them in yourself? Okay, maybe you're doing one of those roles already. And can you recognize the qualities needed to take that role on in somebody else in your club, in your community, in your area? You know, it's a wee task, important wee task to do before your AGM, because I suppose we want the right person for the right role. Okay, we want the right person for the right role, and if we know what kind of person we're looking for, we can go out and find that person instead of just waiting for someone to turn up on the night. Okay, some tips around that as well is, you know, don't leave it to the night to hope somebody turns up. Have clear role descriptions of what the role is. So think about the role. What are they actually doing? What qualities do you need to do the role? And what's expected of them? And then think about people in your area or in your club, or who are members of your club, that might have the qualities required to do that role. Okay, it's something I would do. I suppose in my own club is list of all the list of jobs that need filled for the coming year, and then a sort of brainstorm and write down names beside them, and then they're the people you'd approach to go on that job. Ask potential volunteers is a big one as well. Don't wait for someone to come and put their name forward. Or the big no is don't send the group message. And it's like one of them old Western films where you see the tumbleweed going down the middle of the street where no one replies. So make it personal. Ask volunteers. Ask if you can't ask them face to face. Pick up the phone, and it's not even just about asking them. It's about asking them, but also telling them why you think they'd be good, or why you think they should take on the role as well. And always be clear about what will be required. So if you're telling someone who you want to go for the chairperson, it'll be 1 day a month, and you'll be, it'll not be a wild pile of work. By month 1 or month 2 or month 3, they're not going to be very happy with you. So be clear about exactly what's required in terms of whatever role it is you need filled. And I suppose the other thing there is set up subcommittees. It's not something a lot of our clubs would do, but they can share the workload and they can take the burden off, I suppose, people who are in the main roles within the club. And the big thing about the subcommittees is match the right people for the right subcommittee as well. Okay, so the example there might be a local business person who tells you they're too busy to become the club treasurer. Okay, will you go on to the fundraising committee or the finance committee, and also include parents. Again, you might have a parent who doesn't want to take on the treasurer or the PRO job, but they might do something once every 4 to 6 weeks. So include them in that, I suppose what I want you through now, again, we'll give you 2 minutes, is think of what roles do you need filled for 2023. So what roles do you need filled for 2023? And maybe after the meeting, you can match names to them. Can you identify people in your area that might be able to take on one of those roles? Okay. And that's who we're looking for then over the next month. Okay. The big thing I always think is our clubs are like a jigsaw, and if we have someone who's not the right fit, then the jigsaw never gets completed. So we want people to fit in their areas. We want people to fit in their right place. So match the roles. We're all the jigsaw, and we're trying to build the jigsaw together. That's the big thing, I suppose, to take away from that as well. I suppose, guys, one of the other things we mentioned about not leaving things to the night. It's also good, right? Yes, it's good to have a full executive, and it's good to fill roles. Okay, we all like to come away from an AGM with a full executive, but it's equally important to ensure everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing and that they're active in their role. And that last sentence probably is the big one there, that people know what they're doing and they're active in their role. Okay, because it's no good filling all our roles and then by the third committee meeting or the third executive meeting that we have a pile of people don't turn up, or a pile of people who haven't been doing what they've said they're going to do for the year. So it's really important that everyone knows exactly what the role entails, and if they're going to take on a job, if they're going to take on an officer role, that they're going to be active in that officer role. Okay, and it's always here. Look, if you can't get someone to take on a role, I wouldn't panic and put someone in just to have a position filled. Wait until the first executive meeting, wait until the first committee meeting, and then try and fill that role there. Okay. I suppose then after we've looked at pre-AGM, during the AGM, and now post-AGM. Okay, promote what has changed. So promote what officers have changed. Promote, highlight the year maybe, and talk about the next steps and what are you going to do moving forward. Okay, don't presume everyone knows who's the new chairperson, who's the new secretary, who's the new treasurer. Okay, put it out there. And if a position hasn't been filled, as we said there, make sure you work on it straight away. Okay, that by the time the first committee meeting is coming around, that you have someone in mind who's going to take up that position. And you're better with a vacant position. You're better with a hole in your team rather than someone there in name only. Okay. On the flip side of that, I suppose the benefits of having all the roles filled, and I would say even the benefit of having subcommittees with people operating them as well, is you have a better structure. Okay, it's not all relying on 1 or 2 people to do all the work. you've good officers then. I suppose when they're being active in their roles, there's a bit more teamwork when there's more people helping out as well. You could have a sharing of ideas. We've talked about spreading the workload, more efficient because you're not relying on someone to maybe take on 2 or 3 roles. And hopefully you'd have more involvement from members. The club would be more productive, and I suppose it could be an opportunity to plan ahead once you've got a full committee there as well. So some things to think about from our AGM. We'll take questions now. So if anyone has any more questions, I know we have a few in the chat there. But if not, I'd just like to thank you for listening to that presentation, and I suppose going through that with us tonight. As I say, we have recorded this, so it will be up on our YouTube channel, so you can take a look at that as well and reflect back on it too. And now, as I say, if anyone has any questions, we'll take them in the chat. But if not, thank you for listening to that this evening, and we'll leave it there maybe.